तो आज हम लोग पुणे में हैं। इनफैक्ट प्रोजेक्ट नोमैड का पूरा टीम आज पहली बार नोमैड पॉडकास्ट के लिए पुणे में एक साथ हुआ है। और आज हम लोग पुणे में पाषाण में हैं, जहाँ पे स्वधा वॉल्ड्रॉफ लर्निंग सेंटर में हम लोग आज पॉडकास्ट रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं। और हमारे साथ हैं स्वधा के तरफ से द फाउंडिंग मेंबर्स ऑफ स्वधा, शेफाली जी एंड श्याम जी हमारे साथ। और हम लोग बात करेंगे कि किस प्रकार से बोथ ऑफ देम केम इनटू एजुकेशन, हाउ देयर जर्नी हैज़ बीन एंड हाउ वॉल्ड्रॉफ has affected their life, and how we can discuss more about Waldorf and the pedagogy itself. So first of all, thank you so much Shyamji and Shefali ji for joining us today. To start off, I would like to understand that how you both, or one by one, you came into the education field.
There's something called polarities, opposites, and this play of opposites leads to something new. So for me, it was my own school where I went, which was so disciplined. For everything that goes wrong, maybe the uniform that is not fully, you have missed the batch or wearing the tie or the belt, any one element missing, you are punished, homework not done, you are punished, you have many mistakes in your dictations, you are punished, your scores are low, you are called out and you are punished. And I remember growing up as a child constantly being so stressed about not forgetting a book. You forget to get your textbook, you are punished. So it was a very stressful. I used to feel that tightness in my body. And I remember my mother saying that how in my night I would curl up and start saying out the answers loud. And it was a regular process from younger grades to even higher grades, that it was playing even in my sleep. And then after I was a good student. I actually enjoyed studying, but it just was so pressurizing. I didn't realize that I was pressurized, because when I would sit down to study, I used to get involved in the subject. But yes, in the classroom and all would be very tensed. I realized it only when I saw the opposite, that I went to a boarding school for my 11th and 12th in Sindhya Kanya Vidyalaya in Gwalior. And there, studying was your responsibility, your choice. Coming to class also, nobody was asking you to. It was expected that you come. And first time tasting something like this, that nobody was in the class of the whole 40 children, all of us were accepted. So there was no distinction of these are the first rankers, those are the ones who don't study. The distinctions were about natures and temperaments, that somebody is quiet, somebody is more outgoing, but everyone was accepted. So for me, that was a very strange environment in the beginning, and to just feel belonged and accepted. And even among the children, this play of ranking was not there at all. And every day I used to get amazed at this. Over and above this, the whole setting of the school, it was a very vast area with many trees. And my previous school was just besides, on the main road, next to the main road. And here there were so many moments where I spent not even going into the class, and nobody questioned. Sitting under the trees, and there were so many such areas all over the school. There would be just small lanes among the trees going from one building to the other. Spending a lot of time in the library, and there was a lot of celebration of festivals. So my first ever festival, I joined school maybe in June or July, the term started, and was Janmashtami. The whole place came alive. And all the students decorated the place so beautifully. This was something I had never done. with flowers, with leaves, with all that was available, and all students came together. Some sang, some danced, there were stories, and I had not received anything like this. My first ever experience to receive like this was something so nourishing, so rich, that I felt something in me relaxed very deeply. It's only after this I realized as to how tensed I was. And my whole, those 10 years were only about learning, writing, memorizing, doing it right, doing it right. There were no pauses of just being. And that was very beautiful. So this was one very important experience. Later, of course, I came to Pune for my studies. I had taken up science, but I consciously moved. The city had its own impact with its very rich cultural environment and the people that I came across. I transitioned very strangely to studying Sanskrit. So I changed over. And this was a second very strong impact on me. Because till then, largely being in a convent, I had a very different, I wouldn't say it was just the convent, but from whatever I had studied so far, I always had a very sorry picture cut out that India is the third world, underdeveloped country. We have a long way to go. We have so many difficulties. The poverty, the population, the corruption. This is what is I felt. I generally had the sense. But when I started studying this, my syllabus itself involved having a glimpse into literature, some documents about theatre, the Natya Shastra, then Darshan Shastra, the Indian philosophy, then the literature, the plays, the poetry. I was amazed at the richness that was there. And I wondered how come we didn't know that there was something like this about India, that this side, this aspect existed. And I remember as if I was standing tall in my shoes for the first time. Otherwise, I always felt that India is full of social problems, old superstitious practices, ritualistic. And I had a lot of misconceptions about rituals, about religion, which started to emerge in a new light when I studied the Darshan Shastra, knowing that there were different schools of thought. And that was my first, I think, moments where I thought these things should be brought in education. It would have been very different had I grown up knowing this personally. Then came the third milestone of going out and taking up a job. I was young, just in my 20s, in job surrounded by senior bosses who would be in their 40s and 50s. They were the head of the departments. And in the very first 2 years, all that I saw were they were fighting with each other for this portfolio, that portfolio, and to get their scores better of their department, the kind of means they would resort to. And it made me wonder, is that my future when I become 40, 50? I mean, this is what I want to do. How are they like this? I felt that in the office, as if the adults failed me completely with respect to values. After a few more years, when I would welcome the newcomers, I had to orient them, tell them a few things. And I saw that these were these fresh MBA graduates who would come. They were so highly ambitious, and within 15 days, 20 days, they were willing to pull out any kind of cards and do any kind of thing towards one another, or largely in the overall structure and the format of the group, just to get where they wanted to get. That after the training, I should get this position or this place or this portfolio. Then I wondered that, okay, those who were older for power and position, they changed. But these are fresh youngsters coming from college. What is happening? And I would go back to with these questions, and one day really thinking about this or contemplating on this, I realized, oh, really, we are trained for this right from kindergarten to college, to stand first, to see what is. I remember my teacher telling me that, if you want to hold your position, just keep your notes to yourself. And where was we taught? We were taught cooperation, collaboration, teamwork, sensitivity, honoring the other. The very construct of the school with its competition, with merit list, and how much they are promoted. The whole system is of going ahead and pushing. And that was the first time I think I very strongly felt that education, school is the place where we need to create an entirely different environment. And I think I started consciously taking an interest in finding out what happens in schools or people who are thinking more about these things already. And there must be people who have. And that led to people who do education, who are giving it a thought. And of course, in due course of time came marriage and our own child, and a clarity that till then a lot of thought had already gone at what schools are. There's something so authoritarian about it, because they decide what you are going to do every time, and they're sometimes the ways are so violent to ensure that you do exactly what needs to be done. So it's almost like very close to a jail. I mean, I'm sure schools nowadays are different, but when I was growing up, that was my experience. So it was very clear not to send our child there, but then where was a question which led us to now, at a very different level of awareness and consciously looking for a place like this. Now, this really led us to Krishnamurti schools, many offshoots of Krishnamurti schools. As we met people, one person would refer the other that, do you know about this? And so it was really like a pilgrimage of 4-5 years, meeting many others. And this whole move from Pune to South never happened. It was very difficult. And I was struggling. I was looking at what can we do? How do we go there? I also wanted to participate in this journey, be a teacher. Until someone told me, one of these educators whom I used to meet regularly, they said, why don't you start one in Pune? Why are you trying so hard if it's not working out? And that time I was working. I was in my office doing my regular job. And I was taken aback. I said, no, what are you talking? I mean, I had so far been meeting people who had been doing this for 20 years, 30 years, had already built organization institutes. And I couldn't think, me? No, not at all. And but a seed was sown. And slowly over a period of time, I gathered courage to do this, to actually let go of my job a day consciously, to leave that security. It wasn't easy to leave it and start step by step gathering threads to make this happen, joining a formal course, and different workshops and courses that these alternative schools offered, and then actually getting into the calculations of what does it take to start and working on it. And yes, then finally came a day that a place was taken, a house was taken, and a learning center was announced. But before that, yes, there was this whole journey of to be or not to be, unsure. It's a big step.
So I'm interested to know how you said that you shifted to, I mean, you started Sanskrit. Coming from a science background, all of a sudden you started Sanskrit. And because of some reason, So can you share why you shifted to Sanskrit?
So in Pune, there were many performances in the evening. Now, this was something that I was not used to when I was in Bhopal. Bhopal was evening is about PMT, pre-medical test classes, and PET, engineering test classes. So wherever we went, it was evenings. Either you're engaged in this, or probably you're out, because we stayed in BHL. You go to the BHL club. And mostly it was about what you're studying. Are you doing engineering or medical? But when I came to Pune, I would say यहाँ का आलम ही कुछ और था. I would see children taking interest in dance, in music, even college where people would sit together, make music. Whereas Bhopal was either it was Band and there were elections, and the colleges were also very politically motivated, and politics was steeped in the college environment, and it was one gang versus the other. It was very beautiful to receive this environment in Ferguson College, and many youngsters would take interest in the evening. Rather, it's through them that I started going for a Bharatnatyam performance or a Kathak performance. And then here meeting people, or during the performance, the music and something that they would quote, especially the literature, was poetry from some piece. And all of these pieces were so beautiful. I used to like the subject Sanskrit in school, but I realized this is literature, because in school it was mostly grammar in Sanskrit. And then I picked up, Pune had Bhandarkar Institute, so I visited and I picked up some magazines and some books from there. And it just all looked so fascinating that I felt that might as well study this. So that itself was questioned, or even by my teachers, that you've come from another city, you've taken admission, you've almost done one whole year of science. Physics, chemistry, mathematics were my subjects. Now changing it and now going to a different field, think about it. I had to go to many teachers. But I think this whole environment, meeting these people, and by then I had already picked up some and reading the literature. I felt this is something so beautiful, and it just started calling me. I was fearful also of convincing my parents, but I finally did it, and I completely changed from BSc to BA in Sanskrit.
And this was in which year?
This must be in the year 93.
And how long it took for you to, really quit your job and get into education full time?
In my job, I must say, I took about 5 years. I was unsure, because I had personally seen, when I would go and meet these people, I had personally seen that it was life of struggle, that it was not a smooth journey at all. All those who had chosen to either start a small learning center or a school, or those who chose to be teachers, it wasn't simple. Whereas I was in a corporate job, I was in a very happening field. Mobile phones had just come to India and AT&T had launched. I was one of the first initial employees of AT&T. So there was a lot of comfort and ease with respect to what you get. And to let go of it, and that too at the beginning. It's not that when you do this at 40, 50, you have a good bank built. It was in the first initial years only. There was every day a question, because I was still pursuing my master's in Sanskrit. And there was this always an intention that I want to go back and teach something so beautiful. It is so nice. What and how exactly, I did not know. So I was always in this two minds, job or this. But it took me a good 5 years. Every year I would decide, next year I'll leave. But by the time March came and the new increments came, I would say, okay, next March I will leave. So
one thing that I'm getting is that uh, a lot of things changed when you got a bigger exposure, when you started to see what's all is happening around, Hannah. So today, when you look back, what do you think? What are the key points that really changed your life, especially your transition? From a mainstream work into education. Even the story of how you got into that school, which was more open. You know. So today, when you look back, what are the key points that you would like to underline?
I think these exposures that we get, even if they are very small or short, but the fact that you taste it and you know that there's something on the other side, behind the curtain, creates more possibilities for you. Had I continued to stay in Bhopal, probably I would just have struggled with PT. I was also going for PT classes, taken a drop and studied for one more year and got into an engineering college and been an engineer. It was all charted out. But coming out of Pune, meeting people from different fields, you meet people who are into environment, you meet people who do some social work, or they are people who are into mud constructions. So I think in college I read this book, One Straw Revolution of Masanobu Fukuoka. Now, I think that was a very strong turning point, which started linking me to people who wanted to live life in that alignment, which Masanobu got very strongly. So that was a very strong impact. So I feel exposure is very important. The length of exposure doesn't matter so much, but these small windows are very powerful, which can make an impact when you are adult, to pick up from and make a choice.
So one thing that I'm getting curious is आपने जब ये सारे नए exposure को experience किया, was it you who pushed yourself into all this exposure, or was there a guide? Was there someone or some kind of book or some sort of other force other than your own self? Because at that age, at that young age, going through so many experiences is not something which everybody will do. जब तक मुझे मतलब वो पता कैसे चलेगा कि मुझे इस चीज़ को भी टेस्ट करना है, वो भी जानना है, डांस में देखना है, म्यूज़िक देखना है, एंड यू आर ऑल्सो प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर इंजीनियरिंग या मेडिकल वट एवर. सो क्या वो अपने आप से आया कि वॉज देयर एनी एक्सटर्नल फोर्स?
I think friends, the kind of friends that I had, some friends were interested in cinema, so FTII was here. I took membership for National Film Archives. They had rolled out a program for students. It was very reasonable, and those were very enjoyable days because they used to bring film festivals for, let's say, a week, and they would start their screening from 9 a.m. and it would go on till 8 p.m. in the evening with coffee breaks and discussions in between. So through some friends got introduced to this world of cinema. Through some friends got introduced to classical performances. So that was very powerful. That made an impact. Because till then the world was only about that you have to score well and then get a job and earn well, and that's the only possibility. I had no other window into life before that.
Now, can we come to Shyamji to have a brief understanding how he got into education? And also, Shefali ji and Shyamji, they are partners, husband and wife. So is it like the other partner took you along with her into education or something else?
For me, I came from a school where there was absolutely nothing other than academics. 11 years of a school like that, yeah, with the kind of discipline that if they could hold your hair between their fingers, you had to go and cut it. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Then it was only academics, absolutely nothing else other than academics. Yeah. And all I was only interested in at that age was play. Yeah, and that used to get me into a lot of trouble. And academics was one thing which somewhere, you know, it just पल्ले ही नहीं पड़ता था, हाँ, कि क्या हो रहा है सामने स्कूल में, बिकॉज ज़बरदस्ती एक जगह पर बैठकर, हाँ, देखना सुनना, वो भी इतने घंटे, it just somewhere just didn't allow a sinking in of learning. Yeah? I was only interested in play. But at the same time, I still remember right through childhood, my neighbor's flat, there were twins who were just about 6 months old, but I used to spend a lot of time with children. Yeah, right? Many hours, yeah, sitting with children, playing with them. And also we used to live right next to the river in Pune, near Bun Garden. So I used to spend a lot of time just sitting next to the river also. Yeah, that was something which I just used to love, just going and sitting alone by the river. And this thing suddenly shifted for me when I came into college, the kind of freedom that I experienced. Yeah, that there's absolutely nobody to tell you anything. Yeah, you just can do what is it that you feel like. Yeah, I went on to a different, I would say, dimension of freedom. Like you said, that sort of really you explore freedom in a very random way. Yeah, and suddenly in 12th, I still remember when I was in the maths class, suddenly somewhere the logic of what trigonometry was struck me, and after that I never looked back in studies. It just became a cakewalk. Till then what was a struggle suddenly just overnight became something which it wasn't a struggle anymore. Not that I used to come first or I became a genius, but somewhere it just was not that difficult. Yeah, it just became quite easy. And somewhere I was learning was the last thing I ever wanted. I just went through the motion. I did my BSc. After 12th, I did my BSc. The only choice I made there was I liked this subject, geology. That's the only choice I made. And after that, I got into petroleum technology for my post-graduation, and I got a job. I used to work on the oil rigs. Yeah. Somewhere while working there, I realized this is not what I want to do. So.
And how long it took you to understand this is not where you want to belong for the rest of your life?
It took 2 years for me, 2 years of the job. Yeah, I joined when I was about 21 and a half. 2 years, I just realized this is not what I want to do, because I saw all the others who were working with me, they were unhappy with the job. But the oil industry is such that it's a very high paying industry. So that's why nobody was leaving the job, because they were getting good payment. And I didn't have any other kind of responsibility. So I was very clear that if I have to leave, I have to leave it now. And then I'll explore what I want to do later. So I remember I just sat down there, I wrote my resignation letter, and I came off. And it so happened after I quit my job is when photography started. Yeah. And after that, for 25 years, I've been a photographer. Yeah, a still photographer. I used to do various assignments for advertising, for architects, interior designers, products, brochures, and all that.
And how was your photography learning journey? You took it up on your own? You had a mentor?
Yeah, I did a course in photography.
Course, okay.
Yeah, this was way back in 91, 92. Yeah. Then I got a chance to assist one of Pune's foremost photographers. I assisted him for a year, and then he helped me set up a studio. my own studio. And then after that, that's the way the journey has been for me. Yeah. So I've been helped by a lot of friends along the way. And education was a sector which I never looked into at all. Absolutely. So after we got married, Shefali used to take me to a lot of these places of alternative living, lifestyles.
Okay, so by the time you got married, she left her job. She was exploring.
No, she was already working. She was
She was
working.
also working.
Yeah.
Okay, but she was exploring different kind of
Yeah, she
educational
right through
philosophies.
her working period also, she used to be exploring a lot of alternative lifestyles, meeting people doing things alternatively, something different. Yeah. And I used to just tag along. And after our daughter was born, that's when she quit her job and she took it up a lot more seriously on how is it that our child's learning journey should be. Somewhere I was, I would say, not too worried about it, but at the same time, I also didn't think much about it. And she did her course in Montessori, and she was also working in the school where our daughter was for the first 3 years. Yeah. And then she was always a person who was looking ahead. Shefali was on what to do next now. Once the children pass out of this Montessori, again they'll be going back into the same old education system. So what can be done differently? So we tried starting something. Yeah. A friend offered us his house, his bungalow. He said, I'm not staying in Pune, it's vacant, and you can use this. Yeah. And we used that place for a year, and there were about 10 children with us. But the neighbors, they got together and they said that if this becomes a school, then there'll be children coming here, there'll be vehicles coming, it'll be a lot of noise. We don't want that. And so they passed a resolution and they shut the thing down. Yeah. And so after we had to shut the place down, then we were looking for place, and that's when Shefali came across Waldorf. I continued to do my photography, and then with a friend's help, we started in a small bungalow with our own daughter, their child, and one more child, so 2 other children. Our own daughter and 2 other children, we started. Yeah, Swadha. Yeah. This is in 2012.
2012, you started Swadha. So, is there any story behind the name Swadha?
So the first school that we started, which we had to close down after a year, was Punar Navaha is what we called it. And it was inspired by all these small schools that we had seen, alternative learning centers. And it had mixed age groups, vertical grouping, simultaneously studying many things, an organic, easy flowing day, not very structured. And I did realize that it was very demanding to run it on a day-to-day basis because you have to plan what all do you want to do with children. And the first group that normally comes to you is people who know you well, your friends and their children. But I also see that constantly I had to sit down with them and explain what we are doing, why we are doing, how we are doing. And I realized that some kind of format and structure would help. And luckily, when we had to close down, I had a moment to breathe and reflect on what happened this year and how do we take this forward. Now, in this break, I happened to read a book called Education and Peace by Jane Sahi. It was so beautiful, and Jane Sahi had written that she's inspired by Steiner. And till then, considering my Sanskrit background and my whole newfound love for the country, India, I thought that we can find our answers ourselves. We need not go once again to anybody from the West to look at how education needs to be done in India. And I was looking really at people who were doing. So there was Gram Mangal, these people who were doing things, and by reflecting, working together and exploring. Until my own spiritual mentor, one day when I was in conversation with her, she told me, I was to always tell her I'm not sure which direction to take in life. And she says, if you are in education, I think you must read Steiner. I had just finished reading Jane Sahi and coming from her. And she said that forget East, West, everything. He's left a legacy for teachers and for parents, the way he is looking at it. And I think that was the first time I dropped my barriers to pick up a book from a Western perspective. Till then I was looking at, let's look what Tagore has to say, let's look at what Aurobindo has to say, let's look at people who have been working, who have to say. And when I read that, I also contacted Jane Sahi and met Jane Sahi. And after meeting Jane Sahi, it seemed that it's good to explore this further. That led us to Aban Bana and Dilnawaz Bana, the two sisters who had gone and worked in Waldorf settings in Europe and had come to India and had spread this movement. And every year in the month of May, they would conduct workshop. And from then on it started. So here I got a format, a structure, because I realized parents look for that security. They look for a grade. They look for a curriculum. They look for a syllabus. They look from there's a need for structure. It makes things easy. So this was a good balance between an alternative school which is very radical, which is very free flowing, which there are many such in India, especially in South, which I had seen, and from a highly conventional school. So in between that, I found was Waldorf, that it had a free flowing nature. At the same time, it had a very clear structure for every grade. And behind the curriculum, there was a deep thought. So there was also a curriculum. So suddenly it seemed that, okay, you get a structure and then you can work around it. At the same time, you have a flexibility. And so I chose to take that framework. And also the framework allowed to work in the context, which the Indian cultural context, that Steiner also said that wherever the child is, that language and that geography and that place, the food, the language, the culture needs to get incorporated. So while the framework that he had given was for his country and for the European nations, and mainly for his locality, the whole intention was that we pick up the essence but rebuild the curriculum. So that scope was also there, that in this framework you can fit in your design and pattern. So that was the conscious choice made to take up the Waldorf education pedagogy along with what has been gathered so far. How do we weave the other elements also?
And I think this is a very important point that you have mentioned, is that because how this pedagogy or similar pedagogies, they also want you to pick up things locally, because often in the discussion of education there are questions raised that why we are taking up pedagogies which are not Indian. But then we also have to see how open they are. And they also respect culture of different countries. So this is a very important point that you have raised. Yes, It might come from the European countries, but it has all the freedom to take up local culture, ideas, respect Indian culture, wherever the pedagogy is being used. Okay, so now, how much time did you took after shutting down the alternative school and starting Swadha?
So 1 year. In that 1 year, I really prepared for Waldorf.
And to get into the Waldorf environment, do you need any kind of training?
Yes, there are Waldorf trainings, and then we realize it's a whole long path of trainings. You need it constantly. So that time there was CSET, and it's still there. There was a CSET course, which so it was meeting Aban and Dilnawaz Bana attending their program, and then there was a year-long program they had started in Uday School, and they would come to Pune on weekends, and then we had this year-long work. So at least for kindergarten and class 1 and 2, there was a structure, there was an understanding, there was a format. And we thought that then as we progress, we will take it forward. So we did that preparation for this 1 year.
If you can give an overview of what is Waldorf education philosophy.
So this also spoke to me because of its profoundness and depth that it looked at human beings. And that the way Dr. Rudolf Steiner was. He was just not an educational scientist per se, but he was somebody who sensed life more deeply. And I'm not surprised that he is known as the Rishi of the West. And that's why probably that appealed to me also. So in India, we have the Panchamaya Kosha. We look at the body as different elements or different bodies that make us up. It's just not our physical body. So we have the Annamaya Kosha, the Pranamaya Kosha, the Manomaya Kosha, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. Similarly, on the same lines, Steiner spoke about different bodies. That we have the physical, we have the etheric, we have the astral, we have the ego body. And this is the fourfold human body system. And when we are looking at education of the child, we have to look at educating all of these bodies, and each of them have to be catered in a unique way at a particular time. That itself brings a whole new perspective. Yes, so that is one aspect. Then the other is when he talks about looking at different stages of life, which is again about these bodies, that how they unfold at different, when you're born, it's mainly the physical body which is really available to directly work with. And what are the nuances? He's really come to very refined nuances that one has to look into to, nourish the whole being very well. Then around the age of 6 to 7 years, all children lose their teeth, which is a very important milestone physically also. And after this is the beginning of the new stage. It's the birth of the etheric body. So the fact that it is born means it is available for you now to directly work upon. And that before that you don't work upon it directly because it is unborn. And that defines the entire curriculum of kindergarten, knowing that only physical body is born and all the other bodies are unborn. They are in the womb. You have to nourish them indirectly. That defines everything from the colors to choice of kind of toys that children would play with. He would say heaven-fallen toys, which is pebbles, seeds, seed pods, rocks, sand, mud. That it was just a beautiful terminology. These are all heaven fallen. This is available and this is enough for children to play with. And that when we play with this, there's so much variation that comes. The temperature, the texture, the color, everything is different for each of this. But when we create an environment for children, most of the things are made of plastic, big or small. The weight doesn't vary much. The colors are too uniform. But if I am in the garden in mud, it's not that one flat, opaque color. There are so many shades. And how all of this, sitting and playing in mud, having a lot of plants to touch with, rocks to touch, it just keeps you in touch and grounded with earth energies and forces, vis-a-vis a classroom which will have shells all around with many fancy equipments. And this is simple. At the same time, the imagination, and we just have to look at children at play. So much they do. They would gather stones and leaves and sticks, and they will create stories. And every day in the same place, if they were to play, it's a new story that comes up every day. But the usual kindergarten syllabus is names of transport, names of birds, names of animals, names of plants. This they anyway learn, by the way, in language. And then sitting in the classroom and working on notebooks makes no sense than their hands being engaged, that they cook, that they mold, that they draw, that they sing, that they move very freely, and they are not sitting behind a desk. So this was a very well thought out, a very robust kindergarten curriculum that till the other bodies are not born and the child is young and only the physical body is born, we just nourish the child. And then the whole principles of nourishment are given. What exactly do you do to nourish a child? And imagine an educator speaking a language that a good education means that children learn to breathe well. So, and when he talks about breathing well, is really that they are breathing easy. And when do we breathe easy? When we are really relaxed. Yes? And breathing easy is also the breathing in and breathing out. If we see, there's a rhythm to our breath. We are not constantly breathing in for one part of the day and then breathing out. It's alternative. We breathe in and then there's a process and then immediately we breathe out. So this entire process of breathing in and breathing out to be translated into a classroom method, that children come together, they come together and work in a focused way, which is followed by a breathe out. So they are entirely on their own. And the two magic words that he has given for younger children is imitation and example. So there is no instruction. That this is the tool how children learn in younger ages is just imitation. And they need to see examples of how adults engage in work around them. So they have to see adults who are actually engaging in work and doing things and not just sitting. So it's very important, the quality of presence also of the adults around them, which defines the syllabus of the teachers. Who should they be if they have to be with children? And the children themselves learning by imitation. So it's not constantly telling them, come, stand in a queue, stand in a line, sit down. So none of is there. Rather, as much silence as possible. You are doing your things, they are doing their things, and they will mostly observe how you do things and learn out of that. And this is very nice. I felt this is so closer to the truth than putting tablets in hand of children where they are, learning a lot of these things can all happen later. But I think having a big basket of straws and, leaves and twigs and stones, all of that, and vegetables, cutting, cooking, fruits, all of this, and just being in this natural environment, exploring and giving it a certain gentle structure. Sometimes we come together, sometimes they're on their own, again we come together, and then slowly training their hands to also coordinate and work well, so that they can stitch, they can do some work with their hands. When they cook, they have to be careful, they handle fire. So then a lot of skills comes in hand. So that was the kindergarten syllabi altogether, of just strong physical health, developing all the senses together, a good sense of balance, and a sense of warmth and love and security in the environment. And teachers who bring that very calm, quiet presence, who just through their presence lead the show and not through their words and instructions. I think it's a very beautiful system. Then comes the next, when he says, is the birth of the etheric, which is 7 to 14 years of age. Now, what it is, he says, we as parents and teachers need to understand that when a new faculty is born with children, when they have gone through, कहते हैं हमारे यहाँ पे भी कहावत है कि अब दूध के दांत नहीं रहे. हाँ, so a new faculty is born. What exactly is born? So he talks about it is the memory, it is the character, it is the conscience, it is the molding of habits. And etheric is the, if we say the next layer, the pranamaya kosha. It is my whole life energy, life force. Then what do we need to do when I have to nourish this body? And this makes a very important part of the education from 7 to 14, almost from my first standard to 8th standard. So what I need to do, what elements? So how the next important, very beautiful thing that he talks about is the guiding words for the younger children from birth to 7 was imitation and example. Now the guiding words are authority and discipleship. And the vision is, or something that we have to keep in mind, is that life is beautiful. So, authority and discipleship, and this is so true, especially when you see performing arts and the whole culture over there, the relationship between the teacher and the child. The child also needs a certain preparation for learning. कहते हैं ना, student में भी एक पात्रता होनी चाहिए सीखने की. और teachers in performing arts come from a very clear space. ये करना है. Yes, and performing arts में it's not very over friendly. तुम्हें डांस करने का मन है क्या, गाना गाने का मन है, आज क्या राग गाएंगे, चलो कितने देर रियाज करना है, अभी थोड़ा उठना है, अभी थोड़ा बैठना है. There's a certain clarity of expectation from each other. और ये बहुत आवश्यक है अंदर किसी चीज़ को तान के उसको मजबूत बनाने के लिए. What we call is resilience. Otherwise, at a very young age, constantly being very available and very soft in terms of what do you wish, what do you like, what do you prefer, I do not know what are we really training with that. But there's a very beautiful word he says, that this authority is a beloved authority. That it's almost like the Pied Piper, he plays the flute and the children follow. You're that kind of authority. So that means the teachers also have to work on themselves. I can always bring in others to follow me through fear and force. But how do you do it with love, that they are sincerely interested in you and they do this because they love you? So that means it's a lot of work for teachers. That is the authority and discipleship. That children also have to stay in this mood of discipleship, that I am learning. And to cultivate a sense of reverence for all the knowledge systems that have developed so far. It took very, very long for these knowledge systems to come to the level that they are today. We take them for granted at the press of a button. But to carry that sense that it has come to us not that easily. So in this, then he has further distinguished from 7 to 14, really looking at each age group a little more closely. That every age has a very special flavor and a beingness to it. Now he talks about 6 to 7-year-olds. They are absorbed into this wonder of the world the way it is, if we keep them as they are. Because somehow now this so-called scientific thinking is considered a very important way of being. But just a natural, if you look at a child who's really not constantly being explained of the why of everything, a child who's just being. I'm saying this because what happens in cities at a very young age, children when they are 3 or 4, they are shown how probably sun is like this. What is it? There are so many YouTube programs. So you have, before your ideas are formed, you have all borrowed ideas about this has already been said. But if you really hear a child, if you have not told any of this, and if you really hear what a child has to say about water, about fire, about sun, about flower, about grass, it will be their own story, completely drowned in their imagination. And what comes naturally to these children is personification. They imagine all these elements to be alive, full of life. They don't distinguish world as living thing and non-living thing. Everything around them is alive. And to honor this for 6, 7-year-olds, and in everything they see magic, that the flower is blossoming. Is there a fairy sitting inside who opens the petals? And to honor this magic, because this also is a beautiful way of looking at life and its phenomena. So this whole world of fairy tales, not because we want to keep children entertained, because this is the way they receive the world with such wonder and magic, and to keep this alive for them and not to bury it under the invented, discovered, known facts, and to keep that imagination, that personification, that stories, the folklores, all alive in a young child. Because this is a journey of if we look at the journey of a civilization, from very simple direct connection to forest to now where the civilization is, very complex with many new, so is the journey of a child, from young child to an adult. Very direct, simple connection to what it is going to be. So the child is at that stage of simplicity, and we let that be. So it's almost very organic. It's like organic farming. We are not hurrying up. Then comes the child in the next stage, which is about 8 years old, when you see, he says it is the heart period. So 7 to 14, it is the whole period is of feelings and heart. That is what is expanding. So as this feelings, the scope of feelings that they can feel grow, there's much more that comes into it. A child can be very kind and very sweet, and it can be at the same time extremely mean. And this also comes as a part of a growing young child, which is recognized that this stands out while they would be like angels in 6 to 7 years, a little older, they would find as to how they can get so mean. And to acknowledge that this also comes. And then how through the curriculum, you can bring many images to help them anchor. So, second grade especially is an year of a lot of animal fables and saint stories. So, animals to see all the meanness, the cunningness, and saints the absolute nobility to which a human being could grow. And like this, he's looked very largely from 7 to 14 as an age where the heart unfolds, and we have to really warm the heart of the children by bringing in each subject which comes alive with wonder and this something which keeps this whole thing alive, that, oh my God, world is so beautiful. And in that bifurcations of each age, that each age has a particular nature, and how with the flavor of that beingness of the child, we respond to that kind of to that nature. So when children are in classes 1 and 2, magic, wonder, fairy tales abound their world, and through this they learn their entire curriculum of reading, of alphabet. Yeah, so there's no reading and writing in kindergarten, only when they come to grade. So when they lose their teeth and their body have gone through that transition, when we say that it's moved from one, the new kosher is born, the etheric body is born, and they are there, that's when they come to grades. So in class 1, their basic learning of the alphabet, learning of the numbers. So this is something, the understanding is that now they have arrived into the world. Because this is all worldly knowledge. ये तो व्यवहारिक ज्ञान है ना, क्वांटिटी समझना, भाषा समझना, हर चीज़ का नाम क्या है और कैसे है. So learning conventions, कि अब we learn about the world as is. So this, but how do we do this is by, when we are working with the etheric body, to know what are the faculties that we are impacting. We are impacting the character, the conscience of the child, the memory and the temperament. How do we do it? Is by bringing in more depth, that everything that you teach is fraught with deeper meanings. And the language of the etheric is pictures, that dry concepts do not make sense, but creating a picture of something is when I get an essence of it. Otherwise, just saying honesty is the best policy is just a concept. But telling a story about of a child who was either very dishonest or honest, then this is just felt. This is just, so through for every subject, to bring the picture and image of it, to bring deeper layers of it, and to touch the heart. So what is important is when you're working 7 to 14 years of age, you're working with the heart energies, and what moves the heart is feelings, and what moves the feelings is beauty, depth, sensitivity. So we have to see that it is coming in all of our subjects. And then comes the next phase, which is 14 years, when puberty happens, and a very new being, we also know how much we change, a new being develops. It's just a birth where I have a perspective, I have an opinion, I am rejecting what I have known so far, that this is not true, this is how it is. Now the guiding statement is, the world is true. And this is the time where children need to know the world as is. So this sensitivity of, understanding that till now we made them love the world, that the world is beautiful. So we are doing many things which make them engaged in, for example, in nature and take care of it. But we are not bringing huge problems of nature to them at this age, because then the world will not look beautiful any further. But when they are 14 plus, they are more ready. Now we open up many perspectives of looking at things across all subjects. The more perspectives that children get, the more their inner I, a sense of I, gets a body, that this is also a way, this is also a way. So this is a very critical time when children are in adolescent years. It is very important that children do not get closed and rigid. And this is where the skills of, once again, the teachers come, that they bring in perspectives. Be it science, that earlier the theory was this, but then this hypothesis changed and a new hypothesis got replaced, and the latest model that we are studying, and this is the latest on which this study has been based. So they have to see this transition. So also they have to see this transition in social sciences like history. There's a perspective to it. From this side it looks different, from the other perspective, from the ruler perspective, it's entirely different from those who have ruled, it's entirely different. There are different thinkers who are bringing different perspectives. So over a period of time, not immediately, but slowly they are able to think and bringing this flexibility. So largely it is based Waldorf education on these septennials of birth to 7 to 14, and 14 to 21. Birth to 7 is completely nourishing the physical body by understanding the principles of how do you nourish the other bodies indirectly. Then 7 to 14 is directly working with the etheric body, and how do you do it? What are the things that you use? And the mood is life is beautiful, authority and discipleship are the important words. And then we move into 14 to 21, where it is the unfolding of the I. And now children are really engaging in the world as is. When it is coming to machines, opening up and seeing what's behind them, how do they work. When it is looking at social, what are the issues, where are they being born, what could be done. And all of this needs to be cradled into something which is human, something which moves the heart all the time. So I think there are two very important aspects. That was a great learning for me as an educator, was stress on health and stress on the humanness. When Dr. Rudolf Steiner his work is really based on the study of the body also. That how the body remains healthy when we breathe well. And this breathing also involves when we breathe in our subjects, when I breathe in the whole world, how I digest it and how I then breathe out and express. So he paid attention to every little thing that is going inside and in what form it is going inside, and how it impacts the body, how it impacts the blood circulation, how it impacts the bones. And he was able to really look at it and say that if we get so fixed in the system that there is a curriculum and we are finishing it, and there is no attention to breathing in, breathing out, there is no attention to beauty, there is no attention to the heart and the being of the child, it would lead to problems on physiological levels. And things like heart attack, diabetes, all these diseases will get preponed, because we are all in a hurry to grow up the child, and growing up means eventually aging. So you age also quickly. And all these diseases which came because the life forces are leaving the body, and a person has become very old, it will come much earlier in a child, which we are seeing already. And he says 100 years later, these diseases will come much earlier in the body. So he spoke about educating towards health from the very beginning. That was the first step that the teachers had to pay attention to. And the second is humanizing education. No? Humanizing is when we sit and listen to each other, when there is more connection. So when I just take a plant and dissect it, there is not enough connection. When I look at the plant and sit around it and probably sketch it, draw it, what it is speaking to me, what am I speaking, and we do a note. So first approaching it through the heart way, and then from there looking into its properties, and from there moving into much deeper to look into what is going within. So connecting with a sense of, I would say, feeling and heart, with things which just look matter and material, but deeply. I think that makes a huge difference. Otherwise, education makes us more and more, I feel, also insensitive. If we are just looking at, quickly going through a war, okay, what are the disadvantages of this war? What were the advantages of this war? British rule in India, write 5 things. How it helped India, write 5 things. How it destroyed India. Then we are just going through it. But until and unless we are not engaging into it deeply and talking about this, it is not making or molding something inside. So this was given a lot of attention, and that makes the methodology of the education. So be it any subject, be it math, be it physics or chemistry or bio, to fairy tales, or to just telling stories or working with hands, there's a deep curriculum for each of this. Even painting and colors, and how each color is a being in itself, having a very strong impact on children. So there's a painting curriculum, there's a woodwork curriculum, there's a clay curriculum, that what does clay really do to a child, and at what age or on what aspect do you work, which will help mold the inner being of the child differently. So I think that this structure, this profoundness of Waldorf education spoke to us a lot, and that the whole Indian philosophy of how it looks at human beings with very different aspects, ki man hai, chitta hai, buddhi hai, ahankar hai, memory is there, and how you have to look at all of these aspects to, when we say education of the whole human being. So there was a lot of parallels over, and that was something that spoke to us, and we still continue, I must say, to learn. We still feel we have a long way to go to further deepen it. But it has been quite a beautiful journey to learn, take it forward with children, to see how it works for them, and again relearn, and with every year add something more.
So keeping in mind that in India, largely the parents depend on how their children are progressing in the school. So assessing the or evaluating the progress of a child in India is very important in that way. So Shefali ji, can you explain how in Waldorf education you evaluate the development of a child?
So when children are in kindergarten, it's about a 3 to 4 year program. So definitely first we look at all the physical signs, that what happens when a child moves into a next phase, from the birth of the next body, and there's a certain transition. They become a little more lean. The chubbiness that is there goes away. The waist is seen more clearly. The knuckles appear, the elbows. So we look at that. Over and above the physical comes the social and the emotional nature of the child. That they are very social. They like to play with a larger group. They are not now just wanting to do their things by themselves. Then they find everything that is happening in kindergarten boring, and they are looking for something new. So there are many such areas which we have a checklist. Their sense of balance. So we have many balancing beams where children walk, climbing on trees and feeling a sense of balance. So there are many parameters like this. To be able to cross the midline, so cross-laterality, so playing many games. So all of those things are looked into when they go into class 1. So after about, when they are 6 years complete, children go through a series of observations where the teachers observe them closely on all these parameters. And sometimes we do recommend that let these children be in kindergarten for one more year. Because that much of free play, that much of working with the hands and movement of the body is very, very essential, because now when they have to go to grades is when they'll be working with something more abstract, that the writing symbols for things and working with the conventions. And before that, certain faculties of the body have to get grounded. So this is the first place where we see that parents do get disturbed, and they say, why do you say my child cannot go into class 1? And we have seen how it makes a difference. Because by the time they become really ready, it's time for them to move to class 2 and then class 3. So this child always have a sense of catching up. But otherwise, if you're really very well sensorially and physically integrated, it's a certain different ease. So this kind of parameters are there for kindergarten. Now from class 1 to class 8, largely, we do not have an examination and a test system, but it is observation. And there are parameters of observation. If it is language, how are children writing? So one thing which you will see a common feature across all Waldorf school is that their notebooks are plain pages. They are not ruled sheets. See, ruled sheets and taking a help of a line to be able to write straight is I need a tool to get my orientation. And I need a supporting tool when I need an extra support. And maybe not everybody needs that extra support. So it also shows a sense of balance and spatial orientation on a 2-dimensional space on paper. That when you are writing, are you flying up high, or you're suddenly, all your writing is very slanting, or it really comes straight. And this is an indication that if this is not falling in place, that the children needs to move a lot in all the dimensions, climbing up, climbing low, balancing. They need to move a lot. So to understand these connections and then to work. So this is mainly observations on many different parameters are seen in younger grades with respect to how are the hands moving, how are their drawings, the colors, what are they expressing, because the drawings also express a lot. The overall form of the alphabet that they are writing. All of this is very observed very closely. And another thing that is done is that children are never failed. They move with the whole group. And so it is observation, and then if there's a gap, what is the remedial action that we need to take? So then teachers work on it, that maybe this child requires more movement, or this child requires a little more sense of confidence. So all those things are then looked at, and those areas are covered for the child. But there is no formal test as such for the whole group. But of course, there would be in the classwork itself, when they work in their books, since we again do not have a textbook, a standard textbook, which each child will have, the teachers bring out the whole lesson, and then the lesson is further worked on by children documenting what they have heard, illustrating what they have heard, and sometimes an extension of it will go either through a play or through speaking about it. It is then noted down where they are with respect to all this. Were they able to document well? Were they able to recollect and reframe well? And this way, parameters are noted and worked on. By the time they come to higher grades, they definitely have practice sessions where they are timed. So there are certain sheets given, and we set a timing that it is your own score sheets. So there's a maybe collection of 10 sheets of maybe some sums and some writing that they have to do. And we allot 5 minutes to it. That in the time of 5 minutes, you have to do sheet 1. Next day, sheet 2, sheet 3. So it's a self-assessment, how much I'm able to do and what is my accuracy of writing that much or solving that much in that stipulated time, which is short. It is about 5 minutes. But most of it is about learning, understanding concepts, looking at its application, doing it hands-on. Then after having done all of this, writing and expressing it in the books. So it is their notebooks which are looked at and checked, because that itself shows how much they have understood, because then they write it over there. And as of course there are tests, but the mood in the class is never like that of a test, that there are something that they have to solve which help us assess when we look at how they have done and what is the accuracy. In the higher grades, we have seen in children, they want to know what is the marks. But we have to transition at that slowly. We do that in, let's say, 9th. And at the same time, we need to have dialogue sessions with them that you are not your marks. You are more than that. And this marks is an indication of a way of looking at it. That in this time period, with this kind of preparation, where does your score reach? So it is really looked at as a technique. So what system do we have with parents is that children showcase as a whole group what they have learned by presenting. So they either sing, they speak about all the subjects that they have studied. They display their handwork, they display their woodwork, clay work in a meeting. And the whole class together presents different aspects. So this is the way parents come to know about it. And before the close of the first term, like around Diwali, the teachers meet each parent individually to update them what's going very well and what are the areas which need to be looked into. And they get a written document, which is a qualitative description. So also at the end of the year, this happens. So this is the process. So this way the parents get to see the whole class together. And each parent, when they see the whole class performing in that, by themselves they can see how is their child vis-a-vis the whole class. And they get to go through all their books and the work that they have done and the personal meeting with the teacher. So this happens twice a year. And it is a documented report. So they get this twice a year. This goes on till 8th grade. 9th and 10th, they have weekly tests of two chapters, 3 chapters at a time, which is mainly on the kind of questions that they will get for their examinations. So it is also told to them that they are practicing to learn how to take an exam. And what we have seen is that they are very interested. They are not tired of giving examinations by now, but this is the first time when they are meeting. They're very excited about tests and they like to prepare and they like to score. But simultaneously, we speak about even if you score 3 out of 30, would mean that you still continue to be wonderful for us. And it's the same if you score 30 on 30. But there are indications, which means that what are areas I need to work on to move on further on my score. We also tell that how do your classmates need to help you and what kind of help you can seek from them. So we have to consciously establish an environment which is non-comparison and cooperation and collaboration. It has to be cultivated. Otherwise, if it's not paid attention to, it could get into getting very competitive with each other. And so this is beautiful that so far there has been no occasion of, or there's no need, or there is no concept of cheating, which is there in the school. Because we are just told that you will be accepted, and we are very keen to see what is the score because it tells us really what needs to be done going forward. So everybody, so far we have seen that students are very comfortable with getting sometimes even 0, ki nahi aaya kuch, and that it is accepted and we look at it and there are no big judgments about it. And then a plan is made, what can we do? So this is how the assessments are.
So now listening to that, I can understand the involvement of teachers. You said a lot of observations are made and based on the development of the child, a lot of documents are created. So can you tell me about how the teacher prepare themselves, or what are the efforts that they need to take to become a part of a Waldorf education?
Yes. So in India, the first Waldorf school started in 97, which is Shloka in Hyderabad. So this makes the movement good 2 decades over. So we have many experienced senior teachers in the country also who offer training programs. So when we get new teachers, we have one basic orientation program for them to understand the basis of this pedagogy, plus also the additional that we as a school are doing and valuing, which happens to be our system as well. Over and above this, there are grade specific trainings that happen, a grade 1, a grade 2. So up till grade 7 and grade 8, there are grade specific trainings that happen, that what needs to be looked into. Then there are subject specific trainings happen. So subject specific like chemistry, physics, mathematics or language. So this happens in the country and it is announced. And then all the Waldorf schools enroll for this and send respective teachers. So this way, in these training programs, teachers they come to know of their counterparts, that many other teachers in the same field in different schools in different parts of the country, what are they doing, how are they doing, and together in the program, they also understand what are the criterias, and it's a very good learning opportunity. So this culture is very, very healthy in the country of varied training programs, and these training programs happen for all aspects of Waldorf. So there'll be painting specific, clay specific, games specific, subject specific, and grade specific. So I think for us also as a school and for other schools as well, a very heavy part of a budget is allotted towards teacher training year after year.
So now, Shefali ji, coming back to one of the most important thing when we talk about education, which is also kind of alternative to the mainstream, where we often see that the parents are struggling with the concept, with the pedagogy of what we are delivering. So, can you talk about the challenges that you face on a daily basis, especially with the parents?
Mostly it is comparison which leads to fear. So when parents choose this, they are constantly often comparing what is happening with the same age group in the other school. And in the conventional school, they are moving at a very high speed. As I said, if we look at organic farming versus chemical farming, then it is very different. And if it is organic and if we are looking at a natural unfolding of child and doing the appropriate things at the appropriate age, then the pace is also different. That makes them nervous. And for this, we have certain strategies wherein we have an orientation program of parents where they get to see children presenting to them, where they get to meet the teachers. Over the years, we have seen that for some parents, this much works. Some parents require a little more. And where it doesn't work, they do move out. But each parent have to also take an initiative to see what are they seeking. Because if they are seeking a system which is gentle, which is very organic, but at the same time they want results which are very strong and intense and not very general, because when we are saying the education of the whole child, then it is more general development on all levels. But if we are looking at very specialized, that sports में भी excellent होना चाहिए, music में भी excellent होना चाहिए, maths भी बहुत अच्छे से आना चाहिए, language भी बहुत अच्छे से आना चाहिए. So sometimes it's a wonder that अरे if we look at ourselves also as a person, हम कितना क्या कुछ कर रहे हैं. And the lives of children have become very busy. Post school, the amount of engagement after post school is also very high. They go to many classes, and I wonder if we were to do so much, it is very demanding to learn music, to learn an instrument, to learn a sport, to learn some other dance or a talent, plus summer workshops and winter workshops. So pausing and reflecting. So dialogues with parents, certain important foundations of life need to be revisited, and this is best done through dialogue, through listening circles. What is my understanding of life? What is the understanding of ambition? What is the definition of success? Because the more we start looking at it, it helps to broaden horizons. So parent education is a program, but we also have to remember that each parent comes from their own respective background and conditioning, and from that they would have their strengths and areas and limitations to accept or reject something. So after a certain point, even we do not work, that if this is not working, we help them what would be most ideal for them and their child. But I think as adults and parents, if we really look at children with more openness, then they have more breathing space in their life.
What would be your suggestion to parents from the perspective of a parent? Because you have being an educator, you are a mother. So if there is anything that you want to share with the parent, that how to go forward with their child's education, learning, what will that statement be?
Connecting with oneself and one's life quality. Because if we are constantly revisiting, then a different sensitivity develops. The moment we become parents, all our attention diverts towards children, of what we need to do for them. I feel we have to continue to pay attention to ourselves year after year. Go for a nature retreat, go for a painting retreat. So nourishing and cultivating oneself constantly year after year. Otherwise, I see that as parents we get so busy with the office life and with all that it demands and the different milestones of family, that by then iska college hai, by then iska kuch ye hai, that we completely lose our focus. And when does our life lose certain direction and quality, we also do not realize. So keeping our sense of hobby, our sense of joy, our health, the lifestyle choices that we make, people and social engagements that we engage in, all of that also very alive in life will become naturally something that children will imbibe. And this, whatever we earn from this kind of mindful engagement, we will be able to value more of what needs to be given to children. So I think we need to refocus light back on ourselves.